They say talk is cheap, so let's add some value to your voice. It's Targeted Impressions with Scott Cody. As we continue our exploration into intentional communication, a common theme that has organically come up in almost every episode is mentorship. So I wanted to dive deeper into exactly what a mentor is. Why do the most successful people, the most impactful communicators, almost always have a story that involves a mentor? Anne Frank was quoted as saying, "No one has ever become poor by giving." And so if we take that as truth, then our guest today is an extremely rich man. He's my mentor, professionally, personally, most importantly, spiritually. He's Mitch Williams. Mitch, I'm going to try to get through this without tearing up. It's already too late, though. That's how much you mean. That's how much you mean to me. So, thanks for being here. You are the first podcast of Targeted Impressions that is on the road.
See,
so there you go.
Here we stretching again, right? We stretching again. Mm-hmm.
So a quick story that I always like to share about Mitch to talk about our relationship. So Mitch is currently the executive director of what's your president? What are you?
Well, they call me the Southeast Mississippi multi-area director for FCA, whatever that is.
So that's the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in a 24 county area here in South Mississippi. But Mitch and I go way back to our days at WDAM, where he was really, truly, I'm not just making this up, a local legend. He had grown up here, track star at the University of Southern Mississippi, and then gets on air and hired me out of Lubbock, Texas. So the story I like to tell, though, is as a young sports reporter, I'd put out about 50 different tapes all over the country, just wanting to become the next, Sports Center anchor. And the only callback that I got was from North Dakota. Some guy really didn't sound interested at all, but said, "Look, the job's yours if you want it." And guess what? I was going to go there. I was going to go be the weekend anchor in North Dakota. So I go to work that day, and I've really resigned myself to the fact that I'm going to move up, close to Canada. I get home from work that day, and on my message machine, my answering machine, we had those back then, was this voice that, "Scott Cody, Mitchell Williams, WDAM in Hattiesburg. You're my next guy." And it literally changed my life in so many ways. So I call you back and come down and interview. You wanted me to interview down here first before I got the job. You took me to Shoney's. Took me by your church. Right. Took me by the station in Moselle, Mississippi, which is a whole nother podcast, I think. Right.
Yes.
And that was it. I moved down here, had two of my best friends move me down, and the rest, they say, is history. So that's how I met Mitch. That's how he became my mentor. So how did you think about going back to intentionally communicating? So WDAM market 168. Yeah. It's not really selling itself.
Right.
Okay. How did you go about, because you had a long line of people well before me and well after me, of young sports reporters that came in, worked under you, went off. How did you kind of intentionally sell working at WDAM?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, today, during the Good Friday Breakfast of Champions, you heard from Kendall Lumpkins, and a young guy was a point guard at Columbia High School. And somewhere down the line, in meeting him not too long after he got married, and sitting down talking with him, I knew somewhere down the line that we were going to have a rendezvous. Didn't know what that was going to look like. You know why? It's giftings, Scott. Like, first time I saw your tape, the thing I said, okay, he's gifted. He got something. And then you go to the second part of, can that gift be communicated to people to make other people's lives better? And then if that's the case, and if things line up, can you build a bridge from that gifting and then cultivate it? And then with the hope, if you spend enough time with them, that they get it, that their whole lives are not about themselves, it'll be about somebody else. So you're just making this narrative like, okay, all right. And then you want to see them really do well in their craft. But on the same token, my goodness, that they start getting this picture that my life is, it's about something else. I think, when you were here, I was like, man, he's gifted. But man, one of the greatest joys was seeing you take out Jillian, because y'all are totally two different people, two different backgrounds and all. And the Scott Cody from Lubbock, Texas, that was not the Scott Cody that started dating Jillian. Even though the DNAs were different, you had started bridging. And then once this thing started to come like, okay, this is going to happen. Well, you're still the lead guy. You're still a lead guy in front of people. But the lead guy in front of people is now a bridge builder.
And so, just to clarify, Jillian, which Mitch is the only person who calls my wife that. That's my wife, Jill. That's why this is a special place. Boy, I didn't get too far into this at all, huh?
Yeah.
So going back to the mentor part.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep it where I can keep my composure here.
I got you.
Who was your mentor? Because your story is one, you're raised by your mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're fending for yourself out there. Who did you latch onto? Who taught you how to be a mentor? Or was it self-taught?
Hardy Johnson. Hardy Johnson was my grandfather. And he was superintendent of Sunday school at Ebenezer Baptist Church for 44 years with a 7th grade education. His Bible is right around the corner from you on the top of my desk. And I used to walk to Sunday school, and I used to walk to church with him. And Scott, you know what he'd do? He'd go stop at people's places and help fix fences. He fixed hot water heaters. He was under a guy's car trying to fix a guy's alternator on his way to church. I saw this, and and then for the younger guys there were 2 specifically, they call the young deacons, that he would always make time for them. They'd come to the house at 516 East 6th Street, come to the house, and he's sitting there talking with them. And they taking my grandmama's lemonade and maybe some pound cake or what. And he's just sitting there talking with him. And I liked hanging out around with him. My father was nowhere around me, but I hung around him. Railroad man, 5'6" maybe. Love God and love people. Yeah. So he left us and went home to glory when I was 17. But
you had a good time. You had a good length of time.
Yeah.
Very formative years.
Of seeing how he served and how he gave time to people. It changed my life. Yeah.
So as in a new role now, so you moved over, I guess this is a story I wanted to get into. So again, an icon in the broadcasting world. You started in 84 at DAM?
Yep.
84 in DAM, worked your way up. You're the sports director. I go and run into people still to this day that I don't know from Adam, right?
Yep.
But if they mention Hattiesburg,
right,
or they mention a small town around this area, I can say Mitch Williams, and there's an instant connection. So I say all that. So you're the Walter Cronkite of the sports world in South Mississippi. I mean, people knew who you were, and you talked about gifted. You were gifted as well. But you moved out of that role. You could have stayed in that role and been comfortable and done well and been fine. But you move out of that role into your current role with the FCA, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Take me through that Genesis story of why. Mm-hmm. And then the next question is, how did you continue to remain a mentor in this new role?
One of the most gifted and one of the most giving people that I'd ever met was Steve McNair. Mile Olive, Mississippi, maybe 25 minutes from the station, maybe. covered his game since he was in 8th grade. Goes to Alcorn, becomes this icon in Division I AA, and then gets drafted. And it was tough for old country boy, at the time. And then he plays 12 years in the national.
A foot away from being a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, I mean, a foot away, but he was gifted and he was giving. Most people don't know, there were very few poor kids in Mount Olive that didn't have a Christmas because of him. He was, so benevolent. I used to call him David because he was like, he'd find a way how to help people in ways. And that's why I went to do his media for his camps a lot. Well, he dies, unfortunately, in a horrible way. And his mother calls at 4:00 a.m. The next day. He dies on a Saturday. She called at 4 a.m. that Sunday morning and said, I want you to put together his funeral. And I told her no.
Wow.
We were still grieving over all of that. I wasn't asleep. So she called and I said, Mama Mac, I'm not doing that. And she said, yeah, baby, you need to do this for me. And I said, no, I can't do it. I mean, I in a few days, maybe I can help you, maybe try to help put it together. She said, no, I want you to do it. I need you to do that for me, baby. Bye. So 30 minutes later, Bus Cook calls his agent. He's not in a good way. And says, we're having a meeting at 10 o'clock at Reed Green Coliseum to arrange Stephen's funeral. So I'm still working at Channel 7 covering a friend of mine, NFL MVP, who's dead. And I'm covering him. And I'm putting together his funeral. Wrecked 2 station cars that week. 2 up.
You wrecked them?
Wrecked them. Total 1, and 1 got pretty bent up.
Wow.
Should have been fired. No, I mean, I sure did. One I really liked. One of those cars I really, really liked. But we get to Saturday. Friday they have his family hour on Highway 49 at a place. And Scott, it was in Mount Olive, but the line stretched halfway to McGee, which is McGee to Mount Olive is 9 miles away. So the line to go see him, which is a closed casket, just to go by the casket was 4.5 miles. That's how long it was. And that was that Friday. And they'd had a memorial service for him on Thursday in Nashville. So anyway, all that's happening. Then Saturday we get there and all. And what happens is after the funeral, where that's Ray Lewis and Brett, and it's about 10 to 12 current NFL football players in there, all these NFL people. And I'm standing up there and they roll Stephen out. And word gotten out, Stephen had left about $16 million. They stole away for his family. But he's in a gray box and they rolling him up out of there. And I'm standing on the platform, and then there's that hypocrite question. What you doing? Because in the Coliseum, there's 6,000 people. There are about 2,500 or so, they say, student athletes and coaches.
That had been at these camps. That you had been helping promote and put on and lead.
Right. He had the biggest pulpit in Mississippi.
Yeah.
Because of how he gave. He had a gift, and then he gave. And people knew it around here. So, and all of his camps, he had 11,000 kids come through his camps. None of them paid nothing. Not a dime. He fed them, put T-shirts on them, brought NFL people around, not paid nothing. They rolling them out of there. And I'm standing there, and then my wife comes up. She says, Mitchell, what's happening? I mean, I'm like, I don't know. So we go out to the house, see Mama Mac, and right after the burial service. And my wife had arranged a trip with our pastor, Dwayne Higginson, and he put us in his Tundra truck and took us to Gulf Shores, Alabama. I'd never been there before. And 12 o'clock midnight, I walked to sand with my pastor. And he says, "What's going on?" I said, "I can't go back to the television station the same way."
Well, also you just wrecked 2 cars
I
too.
wrecked 2 cars too. Right. It's a little bit different situation.
So I'm trying to bring some brevity to it, but and not discounting what you said, but no. So that's a moment. So you're on the beach. I can't go back, and then like how does this open up now? So then take me through the steps of how FCA gets involved.
Well, the narrative happens. I can't go back, and then every time I go to a game, or when I'm in there and I'm going to shoot a quick basketball game or what, then the stuff that comes in your head, like, where's the kid I covered last year? Or where's the kid I covered 2 years ago? And then there's some constable or some deputy or some principal that says they're in jail. Or this young lady's just had her 3rd child. Or there's this parent of this child that's gone crazy. And this child who really was really, really good is going to be a statistic. So is that all right in the highlight? In my job, I'm just paid to do the highlight, right? But really, as a Christian, I'm asking, is that all right in the highlight? After doing this man's funeral, who gave stuff out of his gifting, even though he was, NFL folks go through stuff. And he went through this, he was a quarterback. And coming out of football, it was difficult for him, Scott. It was really difficult for him. So 14 months after, well, really about a year, Dr. James Hutto that was at the breakfast, I told him I just went off about this, what I saw, how kids are not in anybody's church environments. There are no camps. There's nothing. And we call ourselves the Bible Belt. So he said, Mitchell, you have a bad attitude. so they get it together. So look, I'm tired of this. So he says, okay, so let's meet at Walgreens. And he was part of my prayer group. And he said, we're going to pray for 7 days and we're going to fast for 7 days. And then then on the 15th day, Ed Langton, Richard Giannini, James Hutto, Todd Mixon, Mr. Wayne Ross were in the room, and they said, we're looking for an area director for FCA. And I said, why are y'all talking about that for? FCA ain't nowhere. I cover all these schools. Where's it at? And then I also got real with them too. I said, man, look, I'm a minority. I'm up here trying to do a nonprofit in Southeast Mississippi. Y'all crazy.
But they knew. They knew probably something that you didn't want to admit right there.
Exactly.
Was going back to, you had an instant credibility because of your gift and being on air and being as good as you were and the relationships that you built for all those years. They knew that. You just hadn't admitted it to yourself yet, probably at that point.
Well, I think, I don't know. I know what was clouding the air was that the kids, the communities where I served and where I was and where I went to all the time, things were changing, Scott. It's like the downtowns were different. The gyms were empty. You go to the ball games, you got kids out there playing, but they're disconnected. And they were happening right here in the quote unquote Bible Belt.
Yeah.
So I told him I wasn't interested. And then Dr. Hutto said, for you, what you need to go see Bill Buckner, who is the state director. He was a lot like the woman with the issue of blood. He had an incurable leukemia when I met him. And I can hear him now. Hey, brother. Yeah. Then I just told him everything else. We were at the McDonald's in Meridian, right before you get to Meridian Community College. And then he popped a question that changed my life. And the question was, how would you love to use the influence you've had for 25 years for the Lord? And I asked him, could I work for him that day?
That was it. That was the switch.
That was it.
Yeah.
And then when he told me, then he said, well, you got to get up, you got to raise the budget and everything else, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, all right, cool. So I walk into Jim Cameron's office, and then
general manager at WDAM at the time.
I waited 7 days, and I walked in there with a piece of paper. It says, Mr. Cameron, June 30th will be my last day. And he looked at me, he tore it up. And it just so happened I had an email copy that I had sent to my wife what I was going to give to him. And I had it in my back pocket. I said, here's the other.
You had a backup to the backup.
He was sitting there, Mr. Cameron, and then I told him why. And he said, okay, I got it. And then my journey was set.
So, God, we could be here 3 hours because there's so many things that I really just want to keep going on, but I'm going to keep it on the intentional communication part and the mentoring part. So you move into FCA now, and so now you've got, it's twofold. You're kind of the only employee at that point, right?
Yep.
And you've got to go out, and now you've got to raise money.
Yep.
And then at the same time, though, your gift though is still the mentoring part.
Yeah.
Talk with me about how you managed that and how that grew.
Oh my goodness. Well, the Lord blessed us initially with 3 or 4 young coaches that used to be football players. And they were just getting into, at the time in 2011, they're just getting paid nothing, grad assistants.
Yeah.
Well, we started spending a little time together at key schools. One in the urban area, one in the country, one on the university campus, one on the community college campus. Just start talking. To buy us some time because we wanted to hire staff. And in talking to those young coaches, they're young Christian coaches, is to ask them to start considering starting an FCA huddle. Just a little something.
And FCA's been around, right? I mean, there was FCA when I was in high school back in Texas. Yeah. So FCA has a little bit of credibility as well, right?
Yeah.
But to your point earlier, it really just hadn't been groomed, right? And down here.
Not at all. And the key component in the growth of it is the coach. To and through the coach. The coach, according to Billy Graham, will reach more people in 1 year than most of us in a lifetime, the coach. So if the coach is a part of it, it's a Christian coach, they have a narrative like none other. And, there's not a lot of Tom Landry's. There's not a lot of Tony Dungy's.
Bobby Bowden. Bobby Bowden's big at FCA, yeah.
They change more lives by being who they are, of course, wanting to win, but they coach like they believe in something. But you put that coach in any arena, in any place, both rural or in the city, and lives change. And that was not happening here. So through relationships, you go and find some young guys you covered that are now coaches, want to be young coaches, and say, hey, look, what's that look like if you start your journey not compromising? That's where we start. Not compromising what you're taught and what you believe. And see where it goes. And we'll start by you start starting at the huddle. After a while, those 4 became another 4.
Yeah. So you put up a stat today at the breakfast that we were at in 2014 is when this 2011 is when this started. Mm-hmm. First off, you got a budget just under 60,000.
Yep.
Okay. And you're in 4 schools at that point, right?
8.
8 schools. Mm-hmm. And then tell me the numbers of this current year.
We're at 126 from Meridian to the coast. That includes 2 universities, 6 community colleges. We had no offices. We now have 8. We had no FCA vehicles. Now we have 6.
Do they let you drive the vehicles?
Regretfully.
I'm not gonna let you live that down. That's a funny. I mean, it was a bad time of your life, but it's still, you got to be able to laugh sometimes too.
It is nuts. We had one area, which was this 8-county area. Now we have 24 counties, which now 5 areas. We had one employee. Now we got 34 employees.
Wow.
$56,000 budget, which we should be around $2.2 million by the time we get to the end of fiscal year of August 30th. So God's been good. He's been good. And, we don't take a dime from the government. We don't take, it's all from believers out there hoping to change a generation. And it can look like a lot of things, Scott. But fellowship does mean relationship. And relationship in this season of my life is mentorship. It is the Kendall Lumpkins. It is Austin Bourne, who you saw, the young guy who just got married at age 25. Do you hear that anymore? Him and Sadie over there, just bold and spending time with him once a week, just walking with him. It's also just seeing a lot of our young coaches in there, still young coaches. John Brown, one of them that used to play football at North Forest and now is a coach, bringing in 3 kids to being champions of character. Big old Bubba Brown. And I'm like, man, it don't get no better than that. Because I remember when we didn't have nothing. I remember walking around this building. I remember when we didn't have enough gas to get to a school.
Wow. Yeah. All those things. I mean, you had to start from scratch, and you built that up. And it was, let me tell you the joy that I felt today, though, too. So this truly was kind of a random thing that happened. I'd been wanting to get you on the podcast for a while. Trying to coordinate schedules is always difficult. I'm seeing that you have the FCA breakfast with Jason Grimsley today. And I said, hey, Mitch, I'm going to come down there to the breakfast. Can you give me a couple of hours to do the podcast? And you're like, yep, let's do it. So we make all this happen. And the gist of the story is you get recognized with a standing ovation. You weren't expecting that.
No,
but that was special to me to be a part of, because that if I come to last year's breakfast, that probably doesn't happen. If I come to next year's breakfast, I mean, not that you don't deserve it, but it was kind of organic how it happened. And so I that was really cool to see. And so that gets us to the part of the podcast we like to call lasting impressions. All right. So the internet is gone, right? There is no internet. There is no recorded history of Mitchell Williams as you know it. So now you get to start from this day, and you get to go tell everybody what it is that you want to be known for, your truths. So what are your 3 truths? What are the 3 things that you would want people to know about Mitchell Williams?
One, that he values everybody. I value people. When you grow up with nothing and coming from a single mom, and I know that I'm not even sitting here without a number of people, even the circle that you saw today. I value people. Number 2 is I pray that at my funeral said he was an encourager. He helped me. He helped me get through a few things. Though he was going through his own hills and valleys, he was just still an encourager. 1, that he valued people. Number 2, that he encouraged people. He loved encouraging people. And the last thing is that, which is kind of funny, is that he didn't mind stretching people.
Ain't that the truth, man?
Because life is a long shot anyway. It is. It's not a short pitch. It's a long shot. So might as well take a risk.
Yeah.
And trust your gut.
Well, stretching people was something that I think you did, but you had a little help when you're working in Moselle, Mississippi. Sometimes at that station, there were some challenges, and I remember you said something earlier in the podcast. Someone was telling you to calm down or something, and I had a flashback of you telling me that so many times. That was there were some frustrations there professionally and other things. And I remember you just walking in, Scott Cody, calm down, man. And I still hear that voice in the back of my head sometimes. I really do.
Right, gonna be all right.
And the one thing that always sticks with me though is when I wanted to go to Sports Center. I wanted to be on ESPN like every other sportscaster at that time. And I remember, I think it was right when maybe Jill and I started dating a little bit, and you came and you go, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And I said, I'm going to be a ESPN sportscaster. And you said, "You know what? If you ever want to make God laugh, tell him your plans."
Tell him your plans. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So man, this has been awesome. This has been awesome. I went through it without breaking down completely. So,
well, I mean,
but that
you are family, Scott. I mean, from you, Jillian, the children, the girls, and man, I'm hoping be around so I can see how you laugh when you have your grandchildren. I remember still seeing you doing all you could when my mom died. I remember that, 3. And it was a crazy time, but I remember you, and there was Keith that was with us, but you in that truck helping my family. I'll never forget that. And that's a joy now because, if Scott Cody would do that, the old country boy in Mississippi that he spent time with, then he would do that for others. That's building bridges.
Well, I learned from the best. That's what I'll say. I had fun here, man.
Hey, absolutely. Come on back.
We'll do it again. We have to do a whole other podcast just on WDAM, and we'll try to get some other folks on for that. But this was awesome. Our first remote. I think it's telling us that we can expand.
Yeah.
And so I think we had the perfect guest for that. So Mitch, I value your friendship more than you know, your mentorship more than you know.
I love you, Scott Cody.
You're bound and determined to get me to cry, man. All right. That's all right. Hey, Targeted Impressions is a product of 3131 Media Solutions, a full-service advertising agency in Metairie, Louisiana. If you like this podcast, give it a like, give it 5 stars, share it, let us know what you think. Hope we didn't get too sappy today, but this was a fun time and an important person in my life. So thanks for listening. Until next time, God bless.